Recording in progress.
I am Chair Seachlog of the Transportation and Circulation Committee, and I am calling our meeting to order at 5:31. Can I have the roll call, please?
Committee Member Bigford. Here. Committee Member Blackerby.
Here.
Committee Member Smith. Here. Vice Chair Bach.
Here.
Chair Seatslag.
Here.
Committee Members Metzenberg and Rodriguez are absent. We have a quorum.
All right, great. And Ms. Grant, do we have any changes to our agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay. And so next we have public comment. So we'll open the floor to public comment. And in this general public comment, any member of the public can address the committee for up to 2 minutes about any item within the committee's purview, not on today's agenda. Do we have any speakers?
Chair Seatslag, we have no speakers for general public comment.
Okay, great. And now on to announcements. Ms. Grant, do we have any announcements?
Thank you, Chair Seachlog, and welcome as chair for your first meeting tonight. That's fantastic. And I do have 2 announcements. The first one, you may have seen that there was going to be a potential meeting on July 1st regarding the State Street master planning effort, but that item got postponed, and we'll keep you up to date on when this item might return. It was supposed to be sort of a report back of where they were at in the process. My understanding is there's going to be a little bit more analysis on public safety response with respect to the promenade area. So we will let you know as soon as we know when the item might return to City Council. And then the second item for an announcement is we're having another internal organizational change, and so transportation planning, the part of the group that I am in, was also part of downtown parking, and downtown parking is going now to the city administrator's office, along with a couple of other work sections for housing, and then with the State Street Master Planner. The new section is yet to be named, but that's where they'll be coming July 1st. And so that is already next week. But as for our transportation planning section, will still continue to be housed in the Public Works Department. So as long as I've worked at the city, we've always been in some reorganization. So, but as far as all of the work functions day to day, that will very much continue to be the same.
Okay, and so now we will move on to the agenda, or approving the minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have, everyone should have a copy of the previous minutes. Do we have any motion to approve or any changes requested?
I'd move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? All in
Second.
favor? Yep. Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? All right, motion passes. Motion, and that was approved unanimously. Okay, so our item, first item on the report agenda, we'll move on to item 2, which is Safe Streets for All planning effort. It's the review of the Safe Routes to School survey results. Ms. Grant, could you please introduce the item?
Yes, thank you very much. So this is just as I've mentioned, going before the TCC, pretty much I think from now until the next, throughout the year, we'll have different discussion items related to the Safe Streets for All action planning effort. So at the last meeting, if you recall, we went over the traffic safety analysis and what our approach was for traffic safety. There's lots of different sort of spinning plates with this particular effort. And one of the initial items that we had done for some initial outreach was a Safe Routes to School related survey that went out to the schools that Miss Chelsea Swanson will provide some background for. And this will basically feed into a future updated Safe Routes to School chapter as part of this planning effort. The Safe Routes to School sort of chapter where it's been housed is the pedestrian master plan, but it's something that we wanted to revisit and update. So with that, I will pass it to Ms. Swanson to tell you about the survey and the results.
Thank you, Jessica. Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm Chelsea Swanson, project planner. And as Jessica pointed out, I'll be going over the Safe Routes to School survey results for the Safe Streets for All planning effort. So staff's recommendation is that the Transportation and Circulation Committee review and provide comments on the Safe Routes to School survey results that will be included in the engagement and collaboration and Safe Routes to School chapters of the Safe Streets for All action plan. So just to recap, you last heard about this planning effort in April from Jessica. This is a federal grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation. It covers, the program funds cover two types of grants, a planning and demonstration grant for comprehensive safety action plans, which is what our grant is for, and then implementation grants. So once you have an action plan in place, you can go for implementation grants to fund projects that are outlined in action plans. Again, to recap, the city was awarded almost $800,000 with a 20% city match. And the overall goal of the plan is to prevent traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries within the city while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all by identifying infrastructure improvements that remove barriers to safe mobility. This is a 2-year planning effort that we kicked off in the fall of 2024. As a requirement of the grant funding, there are several components or chapters that are required for this action plan. They're all listed on the left side of this slide. And then we've added 2 additional chapters, which are on the right, the past and present approach to traffic safety, which is what you heard about in April, and the Safe Routes to School chapter. Excuse me. And the survey results that we'll be discussing tonight will be focused, obviously, in the Safe Routes to School chapter and also referenced in the engagement and collaboration chapter. And as Jessica pointed out, we'll continue to bring back chapters as they're developed throughout the plan. I think most of you are probably familiar with Safe Routes to School by now, but just to recap, overall, it's a nationally recognized and I think internationally recognized program with the primary goal of getting more kids to walk, bike, roll to school, and also to improve the safety of the routes that they take to schools. So it's really integral to our planning efforts that we do in specific neighborhoods, our projects that are around schools. And this was an opportunity to really kind of cast a wide net and reach out to families at all schools within the city limits and hear what their priorities are related to traffic safety for their kids getting to and from school. We developed the survey in collaboration with a nonprofit called CalWalks and UC Berkeley Safe Transportation Research and Education Center, or Safe Trek, and staff from Santa Barbara County, and also the principal and vice principal at Franklin Elementary School. So we all met together on a couple occasions and put the survey questions together. So the survey went out through Parent Square, which is the primary communication tool that both Santa Barbara Unified School District and all the schools use to communicate with parents, anything school related. It went out in November and December of 2024 and also again in January of 2025. It went to 19 schools in the city limits. They're all Santa Barbara Unified School District schools and also Hope Elementary School District schools. There were 20 questions in the survey. There's a mix of multiple choice and also fill in the blank. And the survey went out in English and Spanish. Overall, we received 311 responses. We did get responses from every school, and there was a range between one response, the lowest number per school, up to 36 responses per school. So we're not going to go over all the survey questions tonight. They are all in your handout in attachments 1 and 2. But we're just going to highlight a few of the survey responses. This one was rank the challenges you experience in your neighborhood, and we asked respondents to rank in order of biggest to smallest challenge. You'll note here transportation safety was the #1 challenge that was reported, followed by housing, public safety, jobs in the economy, and environmental issues. This question, out of the following scenarios, which is the biggest safety threat to you? We were really trying to get people to think of safety. You know, we hear a lot about friction between, say, pedestrians and cyclists on State Street or kids on e-bikes. But we wanted people to think safety. What is maybe not the biggest nuisance, but what is their biggest safety concern? So the overall response was, or the highest number of responses, rather, were people driving sometimes speed and or ignore traffic signals and stop signs, and people driving do not share the road safely with walkers and bikers. So it was the concern of drivers' behavior, followed by people riding bikes sometimes ignore traffic signals and stop signs, and lastly, people walking sometimes do not look for oncoming traffic when crossing the street. So this question, would you be comfortable with reducing street parking to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety, including adding bike lanes? We thought this was a really important question. With all of our projects, there's often a compromise. We're working within a constrained right-of-way, and so it's trading this for that and looking at priorities. So for example, if you remove on-street parking, you have an opportunity to add in bike lanes. But sometimes that's not always favored in certain areas of the city. So this is why we really want to get that question out there. It's a common friction point with our projects. The majority did say yes. I believe it was about 54% said they would be willing to reduce street parking to improve safety. What school does your child or children attend? This is just really to show the broad range of responses we got. You can see there's fluctuation. The highest number of responses were at Peabody, La Colina, Franklin, and Adelante, and the least amount of responses at Alta Vista, Cleveland, La Cumbre, McKinley, and Monroe. How does your child usually get to and from school? As you can see, most respondents said by car, which is 37%, followed by walking, 22%, and then followed by biking and e-bikes, which was a combined 16%. And again, just as a reminder, this isn't representative of all kids at all schools in Santa Barbara, just the respondents we heard from, 300 plus people. So just to keep that in mind. This was an open-ended question we had. Do you have suggestions for improving the safety of students getting to and from school? We really wanted to hear just people's thoughts and leave it an open-ended question. So I know it says attachment 1 at the bottom. It's actually attachment 2. We have all the responses broken out by school, which is helpful for us as we go through to see any patterns. Are there specific intersections people are worried about? which there are some trends that we're starting to see. So overall, lots of concerns. Respondents asked for better pedestrian infrastructure, some sidewalks where there aren't any, wider sidewalks, crosswalks, more crossing guards, better visibility, traffic calming measures, more bike infrastructure, bike lanes, bike parking at schools, and of course, law enforcement comes up a lot through our responses. This map shows, we had asked people to identify the closest intersection to where they lived when they took the survey. So this is just a result of that. And you'll see some outline locations. Goleta, we did learn after the survey went out, we had asked the district to exclude San Marcos, Dos Pueblo, and Goleta Valley Junior High because they're not within city limits and we don't have routes to them necessarily close to them within city limits, but it did go to parents, actually. It just went district-wide. So that's why we did get some responses from parents at those schools. And then this is just a zoom in on mostly the city limit, so you can kind of see we have a nice cross-section of responses across the city. Let's see. With any engagement, we always have challenges. We're always trying to refine and tune how we get more people involved. Participation is always a challenge. 311 responses might sound good, could be a lot better. So participation is always challenging. Parent Square is a good tool. However, parents are inundated with all kinds of messaging from school. So we need to continue to work on how to make it stand out and not just get lost in the shuffle. So it's a challenge to have balanced representation across schools and demographics. As you could see, some schools had a great number of responses, others did not. So it's letting us know what schools we need to work more closely with in the next round of engagement with their principals, for example. And then, of course, many perspectives may not be represented with lower participation. So all things we are continuing to work on. So we wanted to let you know we do also have a citywide traffic survey that launched on May 27th. It's available at santabarbaraca.gov/safe streets. It went out through the city's news and brief and also was posted on Nextdoor. It's supposed to close June 30th, where we may keep it open a little bit longer to get some additional responses, and may do another push on social media, just because we're seeing a few hundred responses, but not what we had originally anticipated. It's a slightly different survey. It has some overlap with the school survey. It's a little bit more of an educational survey that focuses on collisions and why they're happening, and but it's a citywide, open to everyone. So please spread the word. It's there. The next steps for engagement were, once the survey closes out, we're going to go back to the school survey data and the citywide survey data, compile it all again, look for any overlap with our collision data, look for non-overlapping areas, and then, of course, start to develop the safety countermeasures for both around schools and just citywide. So that's going to be happening this summer in the next few months. We do anticipate our next touch point for community engagement would be in the fall. We'd like to do a follow-up survey with the schools, sharing what we heard and asking any follow-up questions that are necessary, and potentially sharing any specific projects that we are looking at proposing. So this is just a table of where our project planning effort milestones. As you can see, we're in May, June with the citywide survey, and then developing the traffic safety countermeasures. As you probably heard last time, the final safety action plan, the goal is to take it to City Council in June of 2026. The final planning effort needs to be wrapped up by September of 2026. So we will continue to be back before this committee with different chapters and updates. And that concludes the presentation, and we welcome your questions and feedback. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So next we will go to committee questions, followed by public comment, and then we'll come back to committee comments. So we'll start just with committee questions, if anyone has any. Yeah, go ahead.
I have. The first question is, did a little brief math check, and the resultant response to the survey was under 2%. Can you envision, excuse me, a process by which you can get a better response? That's question one. Question two relates to that. It would be nice to have a comparison with previous studies. I know that, being that I was involved 23 years ago in the very first survey of this type, very similar questions. It's been done over the years. It'd be nice to have a reference point.
Thank you, Committee Member Bickford, through the chair. I'll start with your first question. It's always, even when we look at our older planning documents from the Bicycle Master Plan and Pedestrian Master Plan, and you look at some of the initial, because some of them predate really the internet, and so the responses I remember from some of those initial plans is what I would think is very low, like very, very low. So it's I don't know. We haven't landed on a secret sauce, and it's I think in general, I think we're inundated with surveys. You get your hair cut, you have a survey. You go to your dentist, you have a survey. You go to the doctors, you have a survey. And as parents of kids in the school district, there's a survey almost every week on some topic. So how do you get it to raise to the top is sort of the secret sauce. And we, yes, provide
A suggestion would be when MOVE is out there doing the school events,
Right.
hand out the survey. Ask for it to be returned that same day. That should get you a higher response rate.
Yes, and we did work with MOVE for the development of the survey, and the word to be spread, I think, too. MOVE has limited resources as well. So a lot of their resources during this time frame went to just the education per the contract, and you all have seen what they provide in the schools. But I think for the next round of survey, because we're going to dive in deeper to some of the approaches to address concerns, we'll look at additional ways from like tabling at the schools and that type of thing to see if we can get some more responses. Because ideally, we'd love like 300 responses per school. Like there's that in a perfect world, that would be nice. So we'll continue. I think even though we have limited feedback, I think we have a good cross-section of feedback, and I think the comments that we received are a good cross-section of sort of on the trend levels of what we're seeing and observing. So from that aspect, I think we're I don't know how the word choice, but that it's all like even good. People have taken the time that did do the survey, providing meaningful feedback.
Any additional questions?
Yeah. So this just went to parents via Parent Square, right? That was the outreach method?
Yes, That is correct. And that's been, just in general with all of our outreach, that is the easiest way to outreach. And one thing I think as a positive from the post-pandemic world, that I think before not every child had an electronic device. And so now every family or school or child does. And so, because that was kind of a barrier before, that not everybody would see Parents Square, but now we at least know the delivery for it.
Gotcha.
It's getting there.
And was there any thought about having a survey for the students themselves to take? Or any discussions there? Just curious.
We did talk about that when we were developing it with Safe Trek and California Walks. There was some additional, I don't know, like red tape, if you want to, do you want to add to
Legally,
it?
they weren't
Yeah.
allowed to help us develop a survey for minors. There was something in the legal confines of their work that didn't allow them to do that. We were already kind of down the road with the development, and we did think about having especially older kids take it, not necessarily the elementary students, and it's something we can consider for future surveys, because we might get more feedback that way from the junior high and the high school kids as well. So for this one, we were sort of tied to parents, and we move forward with that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Committee Member Bickford.
This is very much related to city survey that came in our city news update and posted on Nextdoor. And thank you for the outreach that you guys have done to make that happen. And I just thought you might want to know that earlier today, I posted another, let's get the survey done on Nextdoor, following a post that was whining about e-bikes. And one of the concerns that continually gets brought up, excuse me, is the lack of enforcement. I was wondering if you have any updates to what's happening in that respect. And, positive comment, the city survey is really interesting in that there's an education part to that. People reading the survey are going to get a better understanding of what some of the core issues are and how they can effectively deal with it themselves. So that's kind of cool that you can do that. Combine education with getting the data. But back to my question, anything happening with enforcement?
The most appropriate person to answer the question would be our police chief, Chief Gordon. As you know, there was a fairly recent bike ordinance update for the city with respect to enforcement of e-bikes, e-devices, that type of thing. So it's continuing to be tracked. Also, that went out publicly, I believe, yesterday. I heard it on my way to work this morning, was there is a grand jury report about e-bikes in Santa Barbara. And it was requesting feedback about enforcement. So I do know that there was just internal discussions. There's, I guess, a formal process with that and a response. And so there will be a formal city response to that. I don't have that this evening, but know that that will be coming.
Right. Committee Member Blackerby?
I guess Mike, to add on to that about the enforcement question, I don't know if maybe you were just talking about e-bikes, but to go back to the right, cars do the most damage, especially in our schools or speeding or what have you. So I guess, is there a concerted effort, or does PD have any, Office of Traffic Safety grant funds or anything that they're doing, like school zone enforcement specifically that you're aware of?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that we'll probably be diving this in at the further on the approaches part. Really, the point of this survey was just to kind of get some initial feedback, but we'll start to dive into that further. And yes, as you alluded to, Committee Member Blackerby, that it's when we look at our collision citywide, most at fault and related is via vehicle. And so trying to have, and there's a lot of behaviors associated with that too, that requires that they're not all engineering solutions. And so there's going to be a continued need for traffic enforcement. So that is something, I think when we get to those chapters and the approaches, that's, we have been working alongside police and fire for certain chapters of this book, and I think that we will pull them back in for the hearing on the approaches. I think that would be really good to understand the emergency services response to that.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I have a few. So I think when I initially read this, I believe I read it wrong, but just to verify. So it says this was sent to parents of children attending 19 schools. I read it as Santa Barbara Unified and Hope Elementary School Districts. Those are not all elementary schools, right? That's
Correct. So all public schools in the Santa Barbara Unified School District were surveyed, and then beyond, as we mentioned earlier, and then the Hope Elementary School District. So junior high, elementary, high school level, all levels.
all right. I saw the elementary school and didn't realize it didn't also apply. There were a couple on the survey questions. You had, one of the questions was something like, I don't see it here, but it was something like, I feel nervous about riding a bike with cars, and another possible choice was, I feel nervous about not having a separated bike path. Those are kind of similar. I don't know if you were thinking about those questions or those answers being different, or if they just kind of overlap, and I think you could combine them when you're trying to figure out paths forward, or.
Yeah, we actually had many iterations of these multiple choice answers and put them together and separated them apart. So, I mean, yeah, I agree there is overlap in some of them. You could say these are the same thing. But overall, collaboratively, the group decided on separating out a few. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's as understandable. And I think as you go into the kind of figuring out what steps and priorities to set, what does the city and the planners do? There was a lot of feedback that was, we just need more enforcement, or people just need to learn to slow down. And I think, we've seen how road design and infrastructure factors kind of factor into that, but when people are asking for enforcement, how do you kind of turn that into, well, what we really need is like narrower roads or something like that?
Yes, so right now, what we're working on that, we hope to bring to you in either August, September timeframe is when we brought to you the high injury network. Now we're going into, kind of started here at the 30,000 foot level. Now we're zooming in on the network, and we're zooming in on each segment piece. And from that segment piece, we are looking at what are the primary causes of collisions. And typically they have about 3 collisions per segment that kind of rise to the top, and we're starting to see themes and patterns. And then we're going through to see, like, did we just recently do a engineering project on that segment, or is there a design coming? So we're documenting all of that right now. It's and then also, like, well, what would be the education campaign to target those? Again, we were high level on sort of our approaches and safety analysis that you saw a couple months ago, but then, yeah, we plan to dive in a little bit deeper on those. And then we're also trying to contract with somebody for those education-specific campaigns for the messaging, because we already have some additional funding with our Vision Zero educational campaign program fund. And then part of that is the enforcement, because if this is where the people are most getting hurt, don't have police enforcement at the cul-de-sac, or where so that there's sometimes a lot of noise on an area that really isn't causing any issues, where we know where the issues are, and really, so I think that will be the sort of the next assignment that we're working on with the police on how they would envision targeted enforcement for those. And like you said, it's not always engineering, it's education and enforcement.
And I think maybe my last question, just kind of generally, not with a ton of familiarity of the school system, how far are most kids from their school? Is it usually pretty within the neighborhood, or?
Generally, a neighborhood school, but not always. So you start to see at the junior high and then especially the high school levels that they're not going necessarily to the neighborhood school, especially in high schools that you start to, each high school has a different theme or program. And so we're seeing longer commute distances associated because they want to attend the health program or nurse program at San Marcos, or the engineering program at DP, or the Math Academy at the high school. So, so bigger swings in that. Not as much on the elementary level, but you still see that, especially for there's like some of like Adelante, for example, doesn't have a district, and it's a dual immersion program. So there's big draws. So it's more than just the immediate neighborhood that attends those schools. And Chair Slisha, I forgot to add to your last question that besides the high injury network, we're taking the feedback that we heard from the survey too, to see how much of the issue areas are falling in the high injury network, and then what might be falling outside of that, but that's still critical for safe routes to school. And I also forgot to mention too that through our contract with MOVE Santa Barbara County, we try to have current hazard assessments done for each of the schools that fall within the city limits. And so that's a continual item that we work on for each year, that we're looking at the school's contract to make sure we're within 2 to 3 years current.
All right, thank you. Go for it.
Yeah, sorry if I missed this in the presentation earlier, but any commentary on question 16, the what is your gender, the respondents? It looks like 80-something% of the respondents are identifying as female, so I'm just curious if you and the consultants, or 77%, talked about why that might be and how that might be factored into the interpretation.
It's a great question. I could speak just from general experience. And if you look at like a typical PTA, for example, it's mostly moms. It's just sort of what you see out there as the moms are more the schedulers and the ones. So it's a good question. How do we get more maybe dads responding? But it does mirror what you see at school functions. So it makes sense.
And I know in some of our other neighborhood transportation planning efforts, we specifically targeted mothers because we find that mothers tend to be the most opinionated about kids' routes to school and often the limiting factor on mode choice. And so if moms support it and moms support the safe routes to school, like that's a major win that we hope to see for continued mode choice for walking and biking to school.
All right, with committee questions complete, do we have any public comment for this item?
We have one speaker for public comment, Chair Seatsag. We have Barry Remis, and then no online or electronic speakers.
Good afternoon, Chair Seaslag and committee members. My name is Barry Remis with Move Santa Barbara County. And there's a lot of thoughts here, and we really appreciate, first of all, having the chance to have been involved with some of the coordination with the survey preparation. And just want to also say that, it's fantastic, and we're really appreciative to see that the city, went for this safe streets for all. I have to stop saying safe routes to school because, they're interchangeable, but the Safe Streets for All grant. And was awarded it. So it's really great to be able to see that because this so much ties into Vision Zero. And, that's another thing that we feel that in terms of the outreach, especially after COVID and such, Vision Zero never really quite got out there. And we're hoping still that there can be, considering budget restrictions, an effort to really get that word out. And so part and parcel of that is, of course, this outreach effort. And, this pie chart is really telling, to see the overwhelmingly over 50% of survey respondents' parents say that they would feel comfortable with reducing or losing parking to be able to see safer roads. The survey results, again, while 311 wasn't the highest in terms of response. There's patterns, obviously, and trends that are out there. What are some of the most notable requests? Safer crossings, slower speeds, traffic calming. If parents would feel more comfortable letting their children walk to and from school, we don't forget the trip back, rather than having to be driven if there were more marked crossings, or rapid flashing beacons, or pedestrian refuge islands, or separated bikeways that aren't as congested with parking as well. So that's where we're hoping that Public Works is listening and compiling to be able to really get this information and crunch out. Okay, so where at the schools, and also, maybe the thought about doing school-specific surveys as follow-ups based on the results that came out. Hopefully, we can really fine-tune what changes and what improvements can be made in what neighborhoods so that we will achieve more students and families walking and biking to and from school. And I think that might be it for me, but also to Mr. Committee Member Bickford's suggestion, MOVE is certainly willing to consider within our resources, being able to try to penetrate further into the schools with surveys to students, et cetera. Just note that we may not be always reaching every grade level when we go to schools for education, whereas, let's say, the Parents Squares, our Parent Square routine is, or avenue or channel is reaching hopefully all parents. But thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will now go into committee comments. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Barry, for your comments. I agree. I think that the results are very telling about the level of appetite there is specifically for engineering solutions And, the safety is the most important thing amongst all the considerations, but there are so many other economic and social benefits to enabling parents not having to do the drop off and pick up routine, the traditional American way, and letting the kids go by themselves if they feel safe to do that, which is, done all over the world. And I think achievable in a place like this eventually. So yeah, I just go through my comments on this. I think the survey's really good questions, and insightful answers. I think, yeah, safety has got to be put first over parking and, auto throughput, traffic capacity, especially on routes to schools. You need just a basic network across the city. Not every single street needs it, or maybe it does, but we're not going to get that. But we got to start with good east-west, good north-south connections that are separated from traffic. I think including the San Marcos and Goleta Valley responses is fine because the attendance areas cover pretty large sections of the city population and aren't very far from city limits. And I don't think that many people know on MODOC exactly when City of Santa Barbara ends, for example. And there was an interesting comment that I agreed with from a parent in here about, I know it's not in the city's policy purview, but the attendance areas ideally would not cross freeways, especially for elementary schools, right? So I think their example was Hidden Valley students going to Adams and crossing that pretty awful intersection, right, over the freeway in Las Positas, as opposed to they could take an amazing separated bike path straight to, I think it's VA Valley, or Goleta Valley Elementary, just on the other side of Hope Ranch. So I think that's an interesting finding. On the citywide traffic safety survey, yeah, I think, so was it just posted to City News and Brief and Nextdoor, was that it? Or are there other social media channels? Sorry.
Let's see, I think that.
Okay. So my suggestion is specifically to post it to Reddit and Instagram and share directly with the people who sign up as interested parties on different city committees and transportation projects, and even just sending it to all the city advisory group members, period, because they have insights on lots of different, multifaceted stuff with the city. I think if we just post something like that to Nextdoor, it's going to get an overly biased anti-e-bike sentiment. I think that's just reality of the population that uses that app. And I think, yeah, I'll just say, because I think I can get away with it on this item, the grand jury report that came out this morning about the city's e-bike policies and enforcement, I read it this morning, and I think, it raises a lot of important considerations, but I would love if this committee can be involved actively in the city's response to that, since the city has to respond to certain suggestions, and in my opinion, some of the suggestions are a bit myopically focused. Not on the overall picture of public safety, but on this kind of presumption that runs through the whole document that the problem is just e-bikes and the people using them, and kind of it's divorced from the overall picture, in my opinion. Still raises important points, though, of course. And yeah, I think for suggestions, if you do further surveys, asking students, I think would be super interesting themselves. Maybe not the whole battery of questions, but dialed in maybe to their school. And if you have the resources, either having staff or just the signs with the QR code at where the drop-offs are. And it's how was your drop-off today? Scan this QR code if you want to vent to the city about that experience. I think, yeah, those are all my comments, but great work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Hillary. Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree that things around drop off, just signage with QR code saying, hey, take this, sort of thinking about the second round of the school outreach. And I think the timing of it probably hurt you in December and January because people are just they're so cooked, they can't handle it anymore, right? Crawling towards winter break. So I think that's, if you do it in the spring or fall, whenever you go out next, you'll probably have more success just for people having more bandwidth to think about it. And then like getting the school, like, I do a lot of school outreach in my work, and it can be hard to do it from the sort of like district level down. And so getting those individuals, like you hope it's a principal, but individuals at the schools who can help get buy-in at the sites, because like Lacumba Junior High, that's a really big school and like hardly anyone took it, right? So that's not good. So those trying to target in advance of you putting that out, making those connections, and I'm sure Move has some where it's like, hey, we have this really gung-ho parent or the PE teacher or whatever, to kind of grease the wheels of progress to make sure that when the time comes, like we really need your help getting outreach. And I know that there's things that in addition to Parent Square, especially for families who maybe don't check Parent Square or aren't dealing with the technology as much, if there's a way to get something in a Friday folder to send home with students, like I think parents do look at that stuff. From what I've seen, that it can be effective too. Like if that's, I think the schools will probably say, you have to drop off the copies of it. We're not going to make copies for that for everybody to go home, but that could be another way, and it could just have a QR code and, you know, have it be bilingual. And then the other thing I was going to ask about this, I guess the whole project, but I was kind of thinking more of the safe routes to school piece is, do you plan at some point in this to have actual in-person, like, I was thinking of sort of almost, I mean, you wouldn't do it at every school site, you couldn't, but like a couple or two even, or even one, like a safe routes to school kind of summit at a school where parents can come and do, because I mean, I think the thing that Public Works excels at is that in-person workshop type thing. And so I think it would be interesting to see that happen, even if it's not just about one school, but to be like, hey, you know, sort of east side or this part or upper, you know, uptown or whatever could be interesting. And then that would be a way you'd have that while the survey was out in the field. So that would be a way to engage people to come and get involved. And then the other thing I was remembering is a really long time ago, and I think Barry was there too, Safe Trek helped do it was sort of strange because like the city was not involved, like didn't want to be involved at the time, whoever was in charge. And so, but there was a West Side, was it West and Lower West, I think maybe, survey that happened, and it happened through the schools and stuff. And so just when we were talking about kind of longitudinal data, it'd be interesting to look back at that, and perhaps you already have, but anyway, but this is exciting, and it's always good to see where people are at and what they're thinking. And I think that place of how the sort of catchment areas for the schools are drawn out are, I think, super weird, like in the whole South Coast, about like, you live on the west side and you go all the way to San Marcos for high school is sort of bizarre. And so I think that is going to be, when you look at school-specific data, you're going to see like, well, of course they're driving to Adams, like yikes, right? Or just things like that. So that'll be interesting to see, and hopefully the school-specific data can somehow go back to the schools, you know, just that sort of feedback loop to continue that conversation. But it's exciting to see what you got so far. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Additional comments? Go ahead.
This is just very brief. This isn't relevant to the school survey, but for your general survey, I'm just wondering if you can get something in those, you know, the yellow sheet that comes in your bill, your water and garbage bill. Just get a QR code on that guy.
All right, I have a few comments. I think in terms of, outreach for the survey, I do think that kind of broad flyer out to everyone could work. However, as a renter, which I think most of our, or a huge portion of our city is, I don't get my water bill, so I think if it's possible to just send something out in general to every address, but I do think that, an actual physical flyer for the general survey could be helpful. Let's see, I agree with committee member Baki that I would like to see older kids being able to, in junior high and high school, being able to offer their opinion as well. I think in some of these spots, and I think it's also just a matter of, when you have, for some schools, small survey results, the individual, kind of answers were really interesting. When we have kind of the combined, how does your child get to school? In a perfect world, we would be able to separate that out by how much do the children at this school use different methods and how much do the children at this school. I assume you have all that data, and that's always really hard to put together in a slideshow because you kind of have to be able to move around. So I understand it not being here, but I think being able to see all the nuances would be really helpful and interesting. There was a comment in one of these, and I can't find it now, but it was someone saying that it's also the parents dropping off their kids who are sometimes the terrible drivers. Sometimes, yeah, possibly frequently. And I think it's, always a great reminder that, a lot of times we like to think of these it's these other people who are bad drivers and speed and didn't notice that person on the pedestrian on the sidewalk. And so I think that was just a really key reminder to me that we just have to have fewer people dropping off their kids, and that will also reduce the speeders and the people not stopping at crosswalks, that it's also the parents doing that. So I think maybe that might do it for me. I think it's, great and interesting and a great part of a larger project. So thank you for bringing this.
Yes, thank you. Fantastic feedback, and yes, definitely look at fine tuning again on the next survey outreach. So I really appreciate everybody's comments, and we'll look into the Reddit post as well to see if we can do that. And yes, Chair Sleesag, just as you mentioned, when we have had targeted enforcement for in neighborhood areas or specific schools, it is often the parents and teachers that are receiving the traffic violations. So we always caution when that does come up that
Is the result.
it will result. Not everybody, but it does without fail. There will be some parents and teachers targeted.
All right, thank you. Do you have enough of a summary from us for that?
Yes,
Okay.
that is perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, then I think we're ready to move on to item 3, which is the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project. Ms. Grant, will you introduce this item for us?
Just give us 1 minute and we'll get up the other presentation. And so, the next 2 items will be updates on our active transportation programs from the Cycle 6. That will be the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project, and then followed by the West Side and Lower West Side neighborhoods project. Perfect.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Michelle Bedard. I'll be giving the presentation this evening for the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project. So just a brief a refresher on the project scope. As you're aware, as we've been talking about Vision Zero, this is a high priority of the Vision Zero program of our city adopted Vision Zero strategy. So the project involves a new 3.1 mile separated bike path, and that includes, starts at the westerly entrance near the Arroyo County Beach Park entrance and extends the full corridor of Cliff Drive through Castillo Street. Another aspect of the project is currently there's only 4 crosswalks across the existing 3-mile corridors, so we're going to do enhancements to those 4 existing crosswalks as well as adding 14 new high visibility crosswalks. And each of the crosswalks at non-signalized intersections will have the pedestrian activated rapid flashing beacon. Then we are also adding 4 new traffic signals, and I have slides that will show you in these locations in the upcoming slides. So also just to point out, this is not only an important project for the community, but also serves as the completing the final missing gap of the 30-mile regional coastal bike route that allows cyclists to travel north and south either from UCSB Goleta to Ventura. So to get into the specifics for this particular project, as I mentioned briefly, the 3.1 mile path that's shown in the kind of red and tan dashed area along Cliff Drive near Arroyo County Park to Castillo Street. The areas that are identified in text, those are the locations of the crosswalks proposed, existing and proposed. And then we're proposing 4 new traffic signals. You'll see the existing traffic signals are indicated in the area with the white background of the traffic signal, for instance, Mesa Lane. And then the proposed new traffic signals are proposed with a tan background. So 2 are proposed at the Camino Calma and Cliff Drive intersection. That's a new traffic signal. And we're also proposing a new traffic signal mid-block between Camino Calma and Meigs. Those traffic signals will be, per the city principal traffic engineer, will primarily be flowing green for vehicle traffic, but also signalized for pedestrians crossing the street, they will change. And then also 2 new traffic signals proposed at the east and west campus entrances to the city college. Another important connection is, you'll see in the slide, La Marina has a red line there. No major infrastructure changes on La Marina. We're simply adding the on-street painted bike sharrows to indicate that La Marina is a connection between the proposed paths on Cliff Drive and the existing infrastructure on Shoreline and down to the waterfront neighborhoods. So just a quick sort of cartoony version of the path, but just for the primarily the path will be on the south side of the street. So what you're looking at there shows if you look right to left, kind of the right side is the existing sidewalk, the proposed separated bike path, moving along to the intersection. The first car you see moving right to left is an indication of a parking pocket for street parking, the vehicle travel lane, and then the sidewalk and vehicle travel lanes and sidewalk on the opposite, on the north side of the street. Then within the business corridor and serving residential areas for two of the elementary schools, Monroe and Washington, the separated bike path will be on both the north and south side of the street. So that's what that is indicating. And the bike path on the north side of the street starts on the westerly entrance, west of Flora Vista, and then ends just on the east end at Salida del Sol. So recently we had a couple of community outreach meetings in early June 4th and 5th. We had a webinar and an open house at Monroe Elementary School. We've also been holding ongoing continued meetings with area stakeholders, including many that you see on the list. We've also coordinated outreach with the Santa Barbara City College. As I mentioned, 2 new traffic signals are proposed at the east and west campus entrances. And so they also have a project proposed on their campus that will change the circulation. So we're in continued coordination with the Santa Barbara City College. And then we recently went to the Street Tree Advisory Committee in early June, and then just last night went to Parks and Recreation Commission. I'll get into that in a moment. So what we've heard from the community outreach meetings is really just a continued overall support for the project. A lot of people, this project has been in the inception since probably greater than 10 years from the early planning stages. And most recent feedback we continue to hear is, why are we not building it yesterday? So continued support for the project, a lot of positive feedback on the proposed new street lighting, especially near the bus stops. There is some continued concern, even though the project design will, by design, slow vehicle travel speeds. There are some areas of concern where we can maybe do more on that, particularly and just more by nature of gravity, but from the roundabout to Mesa Lane. Support for new street trees, and then support for the circulation parking changes on the frontage road and shopping center, which we discussed last year. So just briefly, some of the engineering design updates. Again, considering more recent popularity of e-bikes, considering again the project has been in the works for greater of 10 years, taking into consideration popularity of e-bikes, the current design now has a completely separated bike path, the whole 3.1 mile stretch. There were areas in the prior design that had shared multi-use pedestrian bike paths. So that's a big change. Another component is in-street versus sidewalk level design of the bike path. And then in this diagram, this graphic illustrates the corner side street crossing design. And really it's sort of just designed as a deflection. It slows down cyclists to make a safer crossing. And then in this instance, also allows for queuing of one vehicle closer to the intersection and not be encroaching into the path. So some design examples, we'll start with on-street parking. Staff throughout the project, did a parking analysis for the project, and we counted all of the existing parking spaces, existing on-street parking spaces, excluding areas of red curbs, driveways, bus stops. And that accounted for 188 parking spaces. With the proposed design, what this diagram illustrates is kind of how we're proposing parking pockets between the proposed separated bike path and the vehicle travel lanes. And with the proposed project, again, primarily on the south side of the street, there is a parking loss of 46 spaces, corridor wide. So again, 188 existing and 142 proposed. With that, we also, part of the parking study, we did analysis and did parking counts, various times and locations and days. And the parking study determined that the proposed total of 142 exceeds the overall observed parking demand. The highest peak parking observed was on a Sunday at noon with 131 spaces. And the lowest peak was 4 p.m. on a Sunday with 73. Next, we'll get into kind of just image to demonstrate the proposed design. You can see the existing sidewalk on the south side of the street, the separated bike path, separated by proposed new landscape planners that'll give you opportunity for new street trees and the parking pockets as we just discussed. For the street trees, I mentioned we went to the city's Parks and Recreation Commission last night. We reviewed the whole corridor, the existing corridor of Cliff Drive. There's 322 street trees within the existing 3-mile corridor. To do this project, we had to propose to remove 23 of the existing trees. The city is a designated tree city. It pains us, every single one of us, to have to remove a single tree, but looking at the overall greater good of the project and with the alignment of the Vision Zero strategy, 23 are proposed to be removed at this time. And we got approval for those last night at Parks and Recreation Commission, as well as that the project team did evaluate and determined 70 new street trees to be planted along the corridor. So 23 proposed to be removed and 70 proposed. And you can see in the design with the new landscape planters, that's where we'll put the proposed new trees.
Just
Also-
one
oh.
question, sorry, so you're ending up with more trees?
Correct,
Even though
yes.
you're, yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yes. Let's see, I was going to mention one other, PRC also recommended, we went to the PRC and asked sort of for design ideas, and what we looked at is kind of doing street trees by sort of a district, so down by like Oroboro Beach, so it'll be more of a native feel versus versus the residential, commercial corridor, and then the, like City College campus, more of an institutional. So this Parks and Recreation Commission looked at that, and they also updated their street tree master plan for Cliff Drive with identifying 11 tree species for the street. And I have that list. If you want to go over that, I can tell you what those trees are. So here's this is just a real quick landing slide, just kind of showing the rendering of Cliff Drive and Megs. And I'm going to transition into our consultant rendering. So just one moment while I do that.
And while Michelle's bringing that up, Mark Thomas is the firm that's assisting us with this project, and it's really nice to have these renderings, especially for the community meetings, because not everybody understands how to read plans, and these are just I think we'll keep it at that image, and it's really nice to kind of have that 3D rendering to really get a feel. And with all the sort of modern software and kind of outcomes that I've seen since we've actually constructed some of our projects, is how quickly or how nicely they are in reality to what the future image would be. So with that, I'll have Michelle bring you through some of the renderings along the corridor.
Yes, so thank you, Jessica. We'll start here. This is along the Oroboro County Beach Park. Along the westerly end, this is existing. And here, just really widening the sidewalk in this area. Moving along, this is looking east just before Mesa Lane, Flora Vista. So this is existing. This is the proposed. So in this instance, you can see existing sidewalk. We are adding fencing here just because some of the topography changes down on these lower residents here. And then bike paths on both sides of the street, the north and south side. It ends, like I mentioned, just west of Flora Vista, right about here. And then this is an area where there's traffic signal. This will actually function currently. There's 2 traffic signals here. This is going to be changed with our principal's traffic engineer. It'll function as one intersection, and we'll have one traffic signal.
You mentioned that there's a bike path on both sides of the street, although that rendering I only see on one side of the street.
So if you look here, if you can follow my mouse, kind of right here, this is the bike path, the separated bike path on the south side of the street. And then this
Okay.
is the bike path on the north side of the street.
So it's black, that's just a rendering,
It's a rendering. And so
Right.
what you're also looking at here is just there'll be different color texture treatments for the sidewalk versus the bike path.
and I assume you folks have it figured out to how much narrower the driving lanes are going to be in order to accommodate the bike lanes?
Yes, our city principal traffic engineer has been very much involved from the inception of the project and has all those numbers.
Yeah, that's more in our plan view, but we do have, and I think they're all posted online too, that have all the dimensions, but all of the lane widths vary from like 10 feet at the minimum, which is, again, a common lane width for within our city, to about probably 11 feet as well, 11 and a half in a couple of areas, but.
Which is-
Again, all the lane widths are consistent with the rest of our city roadway network. And just like for comparison, like a freeway lane width is 12 feet. So.
And the timing for all this?
The construction is anticipated 2027, but we're trying to expedite as much as possible to get it sooner, because as Ms. Bedard mentioned, that everybody's wanted this done yesterday, because we have literally had over about 10 years of community meetings on this, and I think everybody wants to see it done. But, you know, there's certain parts we're expediting where we can, but we also are taking time to make sure the design is right, so we're not having to have a bunch of field changes in construction. So I think after this update, and Michelle will get back to this, but we are trying to go to council at the end of July for the environmental determination. And once that will give us the green light to pursue additional phases of the funding for the grant and really get us into the final design phase. So our goal is to get out to construction a year earlier, but we will see.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I just wanted to mention too, as well, part of the whole background behind the project is, you know, the existing street was developed by Caltrans as a highway, and the whole push is really to transform the street from the existing highway into a more neighborhood-friendly street, neighborhood feeling of a street rather than a highway. So moving further down, this is looking at Flora Vista, where Monroe Elementary would be right about here on the left side of the screen. So this is existing, and this is proposed. Again, this is cycling. The green hashing is for the cycling crosswalk, and the yellow for the pedestrian crosswalk at the schools, near schools. This is looking further down Flora Vista, right at the Monroe Elementary School entrance, and here you can, well, this is existing, but here you can see in the proposed, we're doing some curb extensions, which reduces the time a pedestrian has to be in the street, reducing the interactions with vehicles.
Sorry, is that parking on the?
Parking will remain on there, yes.
The sidewalk widens right along that entire stretch from Cliff to Monroe, and where that crossing is the main, well, vehicle and pedestrian entrance right there.
Here's the existing, this is, again, Cliff Drive. This is looking east. This is at the Camino, intersection right before the Mesa Shopping Center on the left. And so here's the proposed. Again, you can see existing sidewalk moving right from left, existing sidewalk, the proposed separated bike path, vehicle travel lanes, the separated in-street bike path, and then sidewalk. And again, this is the intersection where there's proposed new traffic signal at this intersection, as well as the mid-block. Here's similar view, just closer to the bus stop. This is between Camino and Meigs. It's just indicating how it will function with a bus stop here, with a sidewalk and bike path. And this is as looking the other direction, so Mesa Shopping Center on the right, looking looking west. And again, here's a good view where you can see the different textures to distinguish sidewalk from bike path. So we took a quick look at this aerial previously, but just again, this is illustrating the proposed curb extensions at the intersections, again, reducing the length of time pedestrians have or cyclists have in the crosswalks crossing vehicle traffic. Sorry, what?
Cliff and Meigs.
Cliff and Meigs. And this is the street view of the same intersection, Cliff and Meigs, with the Mesa Shopping Center on the Mesa frontage road on the left side, existing and proposed. This is illustrating the proposed circulation changes to this frontage road. Currently, it's two-way with parallel parking on each side. what this project will do is it will change it to a one-way circulation entering at near the more easterly entrance by the fire station, and it'll be traveling west, and it'll have new angled parking spaces. And in this location, it does not change the footprint of the existing parklets that the restaurants have currently. Another aerial view, kind of looking at that area we were just discussing, the driveway to this shopping strip on the more easterly entrance side, and the proposed, where you can see the path, and then the circulation changes, and the angled parking, and then again the crosswalk improvements, the sidewalk, bike path, and separated by the proposed landscape planters and opportunities for new street trees. And then this is by Santa Cruz, looking east. Here's again the sidewalk. Now this is where it's just on the south side of the street, the bike path, so it's two-way bike path separated by landscape features. Similar view, but this is looking west. So Santa Cruz Boulevard's right about here. I'll just point out as well, additional crosswalks here with the rapid flashing beacons. This is that similar view looking west. This kind of just illustrates the separated path, landscape planners, and opportunity for parking pockets. This is the existing West Campus entrance to City College. This is what it proposed with the bike path, separated bike path on the south side of the street, the new traffic signal, and enhancements, crosswalks at the intersection, at the entrance. This is the main campus entrance existing, and this is where some of the circulation changes are happening on campus. So we'll also show you, like for instance, this, we'll see in the proposed, this roadway will be altered, removed, essentially. Here's that proposed. This is really key in this indication because this is the main campus entrance to City College and a very well-used bus stop here. This key design, the design key here is to really separate cyclists, which is, if you can follow my arrow here, and there's fences on each side to really more or less guide the transit users and pedestrians to the intersections and not have them trying to run across the bike path. Here's an aerial view. Similarly, this location, this free right turn is eliminated. Again, just part of the Vision Zero strategy, eliminating traffic fatalities, injuries. So brings that right turn to the traffic signal and then gives everybody their right of way, so cyclists and bicyclists and pedestrians versus the vehicle travel lanes all have to meet at the intersection. This is the East Campus entrance existing. This is McKinley Elementary School on the right end there. And proposed design, again with the proposed separated bike path, the new traffic signal, and new crosswalks. This is looking down the hill towards Castillo Street. So one of the main features here, I'll show you in the proposed, is the existing wall right here that was very cost prohibitive. We couldn't change that. So in order to get this path and the separated sidewalk and bike path, the change here is that there's a reduction in vehicle travel lane moving west. It will remain 2 vehicle travel lanes in the east direction heading towards Castillo Street downtown waterfront. And this is at the Rancheria intersection. Just enhance, there's an existing stoplight there, but we're enhancing the crosswalks at this location and widening the sidewalk here. So that's the last of our renderings. I'll switch back real briefly to our PowerPoint. If I can get this mouse to cooperate. Touchy. Need PowerPoint. Okay. And And then real just quickly, next steps, as Jessica mentioned earlier, but next steps is environmental review. We intend to go to City Council on July 29th. We just also recently submitted the coastal exemption application. Once we go through City Council for the environmental determination, we can file the CEQA documentation. Then next steps will continue coordination with stakeholders, including MTD and City College and the other stakeholders mentioned. And then, as Ms. Grant mentioned, obtaining the environmental determination will allow us to get to the next phase and continue into final design and then construction. And then once we get there, we'll continue to have community outreach meetings as well, and that will focus on the construction phases. So that concludes the presentation for Cliff Drive. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
And I also want to mention, besides the capital project, there is a non-infrastructure component to the grant, where once the infrastructure is in place, we'll have specific grant monies for, in collaboration with MOVE, Santa Barbara County, to have specific education around the facility for the elementary schools. So, and then I believe we have one community ride as well included in that.
All right, we will now go into committee questions. Go ahead.
This is actually from a written public comment, and it might already be addressed before this person wrote this. They have 3 questions. The first one is a concern that the new bike path ends at Oliver and starts again at Salida del Sol. I didn't see that on your...
No, so the current design is that it's from Salida del Sol at the east and through Flora Vista at the west.
So
It does not end at Oliver.
There's no break.
It extends from Flora Vista to the west to Salida del Sol to the east.
One would think.
And then that's the area where there's a bike path on both sides of the street. So we did receive also the same letter, obviously. So we'll be getting back to that resident for response to her questions. But if you wanted to go over the other 2, that's fine as well.
Well, no, I won't take up the time if you're
Yeah.
already on it. Thanks.
Committee Member Smith?
Yeah. First question is, the last meeting we had on this, there was a big kerfuffle about the church, the Methodist Church. I don't remember the changes they wanted, but I remember it made sense what they wanted, and just wondering what happened there.
Yeah, so what we heard from the First Methodist Church was that on-street parking was very important, as well as safe crossings across the Cliff Drive to get to the church. And we have met with them on now several occasions to really understand their programming and sort of parking demands, and that also played into feedback when we were doing the overall parking demand analysis for the entire corridor of sort of maybe what they may perceive as the peak times as well, so we can make sure we were covering and counting during those times of what they perceived as the highest usage of on-street. And just a little bit background on their property, it's their church's, the entrance is at the street, but then it goes, there's a really big grade drop, and they do not have any elevators on their site. And so if they do have a parking lot associated with that, but due to some of their patrons may not be able to navigate the stairs, and then again going up the steep grade for the sidewalk if they do park at their property. If they're not an able body, it's more difficult. So we have gone through all of the parking, and their most recent feedback was that they appreciated us taking a deeper dive into that. And they also understand, like, because there's a couple parking spaces lost at the crossings, but they also understand the importance of having a safe crossing to get to the church. And so they understand the balance. So overall, it was a good discussion that we had with them probably about a month ago. And they're excited for the project.
Yeah. So my questions, I had questions in general just about parking. Like you gave you lost 40, whatever it was, parking spaces. But like, as for the church, I mean, they need parking spaces near the church. There are places where you need parking and other places where you don't. And do you feel as if you got the parking spaces in the right place? It's, there's
Yes.
another place where I saw that everything changed, and I don't know if you got more or less parking spaces, but where you referred to the frontage road, where the Rose Cafe, I don't know if it's still there, but do you have as many spaces there as there were, or close?
Close, I think I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but they also have a large parking lot behind them, so, and that is parking in the right-of-way, so it's not it's not on their property, but it's close. But the businesses, we did meet with the businesses in the past, and they were supportive of the frontage circulation changes.
Yep, okay. And last question, and I think we talked about this last time, so forgive me, but it's obviously going from, east and westbound bike paths on both sides to the westbound cyclists have to switch at some point. And I'm picturing 12-year-old kids on 30-mile-per-hour e-bikes crossing Cliff. Where is that happening, and is it going to be okay?
It's in the vicinity of Salida del Sol for one of the crossings. We steered away from having the crossings at Cliff and Meigs intersection because that is a really heavily traveled. So we wanted it outside, the crossing to happen outside of that. Although if you are a cyclist, you could still, cross at any crossing, but we wanted it ideally directed away from that intersection. And then Flora Vista is the other location point for that. And all of those, well, the Flora Vista, that has a traffic signal, and the Salida del Sol has rapid flashing beacons for the crossing.
Okay, good. Thanks.
All right. Committee questions?
Okay. I got a few written down here. So I think it was slide 6 in the presentation, the street mix design. I'm just curious, how long is that segment where there's like 2 lanes of traffic again? 2 lanes on each side?
It's very short. It's right in the vicinity of the Mesa Shopping Center, and basically that sort of quadrant.
So is the logic behind, because to me I'm a little concerned that like it could create bottlenecks or confusion because of how short it is, but is the logic just so that the traffic that's turning into the center and out has more space to maneuver that, and the people going through aren't getting in the way of them? Or just like curious why it's like that.
We've gone through a lot of iterations and a lot of TCC meetings just for this specific area. And some of the items that will help for getting in and out of the driveways, they'll be right onlys. Like, so if say we went to McDonald's and yes, and then you're leaving the shopping center to get on the Cliff, it's only a right turn out. So we hope for that will decrease some of the vehicle-to-vehicle patterns we were seeing for collisions. And I'm trying to think, I think the original iteration had the bike path just on one side of the street, just to provide a little bit of background. But through all the committee meetings and then community meetings, it was really brought to our attention how important all sides of the commercial district is to get to those destinations. And so that's when we had the bike path basically split off into both sides of the street. So we were serving all destinations. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, there was one iteration too where we had kind of islands in between, and then that really wasn't supported by the businesses. I'd have to relook at all the reasoning why to jog my memory, but
The tenants or the property owner?
all of the above, and then resident feedback as well. So this is sort of what we have successfully, I think, landed on for the design.
Yeah, and I'll preface, I love everything about the project. I've been asked to ask why, like, what the net benefit is, like, from a safety perspective of separating them. I know it's been discussed a lot, but I'm just still curious, like, what the main driving reason is that it's better to have them separate than on the same side.
It really came down to being able to serve all the destinations along the Cliff Drive corridor, and why it was separated, and why we extended the separation. And that was kind of the most recent change, because before it was Camino Calma was going to be the switchback right after the shopping center. But a lot of residences and some of the also higher density apartments wanted to be able to pop into the path on the north side.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. I think I'll save for comments. So are there, like on slide 11, are the parking pockets, are those on both sides of the street when possible? Kind of like okay, gotcha. And then, so what was like the public sentiment, if you can tell us, at was it the Parks and Rec committee that you were just at, or is it Street Tree Advisory Committee last night? I'm just previewing, like, how much angst is there going to be about the trees this time?
Overall, good question, thank you. Overall, with any tree removal application, it's a little painful. Nobody wants to see a tree removed, but the consensus, it was approved unanimously, and they recognize this is a very important safety project for the community.
Was there public comment?
There was a couple. Like, I think there's two people in person, one person online.
Okay.
There was a little bit of heartache for like 4 of the existing trees, a couple of the more mature trees, particularly like right in, there's 2 cypress trees near the Cliff and Meg's intersection, the cork oak tree near the bus stop, and then 2 of the mature trees near the City College entrance.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
they, again, recognize that it's an important community project and for the greater good, and we're supportive of the fact that we're proposing almost triple new street trees.
Awesome. Okay, great. And then on City College, I think there was a slide where there's a fence going up at one of the entrances. Is that all on city public right of way, or is that in collaboration with the City College? I guess I'm just curious about the fencing.
So that portion, that little jog, it's mainly on the east campus, that is on their property. So we would have an easement, and so to have the bike path on City College property, but we're not asking to obtain the right of way. Again, it would just sort of be like a permanent easement. We would have to go to the City College Board, and I believe we tentatively have that set in the fall. I think September, October timeframe is when we'll return there. And it's something that we have to go through the environmental phase before we go into the right-of-way phase. It's just a stipulation of the grant. And so once we're officially in that phase, then we can move forward with that topic.
Yeah. I think it was another rendering with City College with like the metal fencing.
Yes, right
Yeah.
there.
So I'm just like, are they cool with that? Like, is there going to be complaints about people who have to walk around that to get to the bus stop? I'm just a little bored. about the
It's
fencing.
for the, yeah, so we definitely, we've met on several occasions with the City College team and then also their board as well. And it was really for the safety of all users that somebody riding the bus just wouldn't blindly walk into a faster moving bike path. And so, and they really, again, as Ms. Bedard mentioned, they are going to be reworking their whole entrance into the main campus. And so they really want it channeled to fit in with their new entrance design.
And last follow-up on this, like how long approximately is it fenced like that?
Oh, it's a very short section. It's essentially along the main campus after their driveway. I'm not sure if we
Okay,
have
so that's pretty close. Okay.
yeah, actually right in this, yeah, it's really that one short section. That's the only
Oh,
thing
okay.
that's gated right there.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay. That's it for me. Thank you so much.
A couple questions. So there's some markings. This is one of the intersections in the renderings that I'm curious about, where crosswalk markings are different. At Flora Vista, it's like half of it's green and half of it's yellow. Is that a school zone thing, the yellow piece? It is, okay. Because then at another one, it's white and green. I'm like wondering if people are gonna know what that means. And then here, I assume you're putting bikes through this ladder stripe if they're coming from, if they're crossing Loma Alta.
Good catch. You know what? We need to update this slide. But it would be similar to the Flora Vista Cliff intersection. Good eyes.
Okay. Because there are a lot of flavors. There are a lot
No,
of flavors of
it's-
crosswalks in this.
It's
so-
funny because it's like we go through these so many
yeah.
times and it's just, and you mentioned, I'm like, oh. So we will get that updated for our records. Yeah, the idea is to not have unique treatment
Yep.
for each intersection, to have it standardized.
Great. And then the meetings that you just had, like online and then at Morona School, how were those? Were they well attended? I know they generally are. Like you said, we've been doing it for 10 years. But how was the attendance and the feedback there?
Very good. For the webinar, we actually had, over 100 people signed up for the webinar. Not that many attended, but, and then we had a good flow in the open house. I would say probably 50, 60 people at various points.
And they were seeing the renderings for the first time, right? Yeah, so that's nice. And then, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then as you're getting into the sort of final design phases after you get through environmental, a couple things I was thinking about, and perhaps it's already in there. And just to say, I've seen the plan view so many times over the years. But really until you see the renderings, you just, it's like, it's also, 2D, right? And so I just want to say these are great, and it makes me think about the project in a different way, a better way, actually. For things like bike parking, and bike share, and stuff like that, is that, because, right, in theory, especially through the commercial area, you're hoping there's going to be more biking and people are going to need to put their bikes somewhere or use bike share or whatever. Is that kind of already worked into the design, or is that something that would happen in the final phase?
We have been working on that. I think the pecking order, we were trying to decide where the landscaping was. We have to do the stormwater management. And once we're kind of through that phase, then we see the sort of the final curbed areas that will just be concrete. And so those then provide the opportunities. But short answer is yes, we definitely want to be able to have many bike share stations along the corridor, because the way it is now with the very narrow sidewalks, we really can't have that many. We can't have hardly any stations in the Mesa area, and I know it's demanded. But once we have a safe facility on there, we expect to see a lot more stations popping up.
Thank you.
Last one. The future connection shown in the map, I think it was slide 4 of the presentation. It's like Pershing Park is one of them, and I forget what the other one is.
I'm glad you, yes, I saw that. It's actually not going to be through Pershing Park. I think that was an original connection, and through discussions with our Parks Department, the more ideal and less environmentally intrusive design would be to just have it on Castillo. Cliff to Castillo, so widening it adjacent to Pershing Park. And so we did have a concept design for that, and we have it tied to the Castillo undercrossing improvements. And that, we did apply for the grant, we weren't successful, but it is definitely on our radar. So we do have a concept design for that connection.
Gotcha. I'll just throw out, I'm not sure I agree with their thought process on taking it onto Castillo, but I mean, if it's there, it's there. What about the other one on Shoreline? What's the status of that?
So that would be like right in if you're at the harbor area, and then the multi-use, the beachway disappears into the parking lot,
Yeah.
and then you pick up a little bit of an informal path to Ledbetter before you go up on Shoreline, up the hill. And so the city has grant funding for the sea level rise adaptation implementation plan, if I said it all correctly. In that plan, there is funding to develop a concept design for a connection through there. And so they've had the meeting kickoff probably last September for the overall effort, and we will be pulled into that design, and it's something that we will take to the TCC for your review and input, but they just haven't been there yet in that part of the overall planning process. There's a lot of different elements associated with that implementation plan.
But they have funding for the actual improvement baked into that process?
For a concept level design that would give us a cost estimate so we could seek grant funding for.
Last question, is there any thought, especially for the Pershing piece, I feel like is such a huge way to make this whole project connect to downtown. Is there any thought process of not waiting for an ATP grant that might never come and front loading it through Measure C, or Goleta does bonds, like anything like that, any other revenue sources?
We'll see for this project. If we got a super amazing construction bid, then there might be a change order. But right now, and with the cost of construction right now, everything's trending in the other direction. But we're definitely looking to see at other sources to fund it.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, I have a few questions. Let's see, first, you mentioned a tree list of, I think it was 11 trees. We don't have to go over that, but I would love to see the tree list. Yay. All right, I'll check that out.
Thank you. I can send that to you via email if you'd.
Awesome, that would be great. I think, looking at the SBCC one that we were, on one of the renderings that we were just looking at, where the right turn lane had been removed. Yes, that one. So it looks somehow to me it looks less dramatic on here than it does on this paper, but now that I'm seeing it with that right turn removed as kind of a separate lane, it feels to me suddenly like, you know, like where that gray car is, if it were to make a right turn, the way the driver's view is pointed is sort of over off on this side, and they kind of have to make this hairpin turn where if a cyclist is coming from the opposite direction towards the intersection and there's that big tree in the way that, oh, sorry, I bumped my mic, that the driver might not be looking in the direction of that bike path where a cyclist might be kind of hidden and might come out kind of quickly.
Yeah, thank you for that. One of the key features here, just as well, is the widened, that removing that right turn lane gives us the widened sidewalk at the intersection. So theoretically, all cyclists and pedestrians will come to that intersection. I was just conferring with Ms. Grant, but we'd have to double check. We might, with a traffic engineer, to see if maybe that would be a no right on red turn, but we can confirm that.
And I think the other purpose was to get rid of the free right that was, people were taking at higher speeds, and so it is designed to make it more difficult to turn at a higher speed there. But we can confirm if there is a prohibition on the right turn on red.
Yeah, that was going to be my kind of comment about that, was I do think the much wider sidewalk will, I think exactly as you said, reduce speeds. And so I think it is a question of like, could you manage that with signal management and turning policy? And I think kind of using this as an excuse to work in something. I saw on this letter, point 2, they were still concerned about some of the crossings at Meigs and Cliff. And what I've noticed around the city in the last month or so is more intersections where the pedestrian crossing goes first and pedestrians get to step out and before cars are able to turn. And
A
so-
leading, we call that leading pedestrian interval.
Yes, exactly. So I was wondering, is there a chance to work any of that in and potentially on some of these intersections that are still high volume?
Yes, that will have the lead pedestrian interval. And over time, we're trying to get that for every single traffic signal.
Thank you.
And then that also with the public comment letter, I think she had requested curb extensions at this, and it actually will have curb extensions. So that's what we will get back to this particular resident to clarify that.
All right, thank you. If we have no other questions from the committee, we'll go to public comment.
Chair seats flag, we have Barry Remis for in-person public comment, and then Geisha Kirsch submitted electronically, which has been distributed during the meeting. You all have a copy, and then no online speakers.
Hello again, Chair Cieslag and committee members against Barry. You just stole my thunder. That's right. Telepathy. Because I was going to point out, well, first of all, let me back up. Santa Barbara County has been fully supportive of this project, and it's really great to see that a wonderful project has become even more wonderful because of the very thoughtful and carefully analyzed design improvements and design changes along the way, iterative, based on feedback. Just the separation of the bikeway is just, it's wonderful. And we really appreciate that Public Works has been taking into account the prolific and more extensive use of e-bikes and faster bike speeds to be able to provide more safety for pedestrians as well. So this is going to be great. Loving to see the new shady parking pockets provided by the opportunity for new street trees. Amid that separation, that's going to be really great to also not only make it much more aesthetic, but also to help with traffic calming as well. The Meigs and Cliff Drive intersection, just wonderful to see the curb extensions, the new directional ADA ramps. which also go along with that. And yes, the leading pedestrian interval, which I was going to definitely say, getting a little bit further into the trenches, but we definitely would love to be able to see that at as many intersections as possible to, again, enhance the element of pedestrian safety. Again, just one of the, I also actually sent a response back to the public commenter yesterday because they forwarded their comments to us as well, and I helped them to appreciate the new design as well as explaining out some of the reasoning, the logic behind the separation of the bikeway, so that westbound, and I pointed out to them that this won't affect pedestrians because pedestrians will now be separated from bicyclists, but also that it's only westbound cyclists that will need to actually make the conversion or the switch over to the other side of the mountain side of the street. But that, from what we recalled, a lot of that decision came from the fact that with a lot of the driveways on the ocean side of the street, that motorists exiting and entering those driveways and side streets may not be necessarily expecting bicyclists to come in that opposite direction. And so this, we questioned it at first too. We wondered, gee, how is this going to work? And are bicyclists really going to be up for this switchover? But we're also pleased to see that there will be rapid flashing beacons at these crossings and/or a new signal, so that, and we really want to further emphasize signage will be important, just really to get people to understand that this is for their safety and convenience as well. So again, we're totally looking forward to the continuation of the project. With the cost of living around here, hopefully most of us will still be living in Santa Barbara when this is completed, because I'm looking forward to being able to ride my bike through it and to take advantage of it. So we thank you again.
Thank you. And we'll now go to committee comment. Committee Member Smith?
I really like what you're doing, the whole thing, and, Barry talked about a lot of things, but for me, even without e-bikes, as a formerly rapid cyclist, I always hated bike path, pedestrian, multi-use paths. This is a long enough stretch that people will be riding bikes to go from, they might be going miles. And yeah, separating that is a great thing. I really like it.
Other comments?
Okay. Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, with all these renderings, I'm like even more excited than I was before. Just to see it, how it actually looks street level is really great. Wayfinding will be important, and to what Committee Member Bakke brought up about, and the public commenter too, of one side versus the other. I'm always, a lot of times when we think about these projects, at least in the conceptual design, it's like, even like the beachway, right? It's like, okay, it's bidirectional, it goes a really long way, but people, I'm a person who bikes for transportation, not just to see the sights, and I think that's a lot of people also, and those transitions are so important, right? Like if you live on the Mesa, you're not just biking 3 miles straight, right? Like you're going to get on and you're going to get off somewhere. If you're coming to the Mesa, ideally, right, you're going to stop and do something while you're there. You're not just passing through. And so I think that's to me was one of the things that made sense, where when you have it on both sides, you're going to, for a lot of people, reduce the awkward thing where, well, dang, I'm over here on the side with the bike path, and how the heck am I going to get over there, right? There's more opportunities. So I think that's important, and I think as you get into the real granularity of the design, you'll, I hope, find more opportunities for those sort of more elegant transitions from one place to the other, and I think wayfinding and signage will be really important, and yes, education about what does this mean? What do all these markings mean? Because a lot of people, they haven't seen them certainly in their neighborhood before. And then one other thing, just to think about, maybe, is at the main campus, City College main campus or East Campus, bus stop area, thinking about maybe having that with the like bus-only brick red treatment in the actual bus pocket there, so that people, especially because the turn is different, that people know like that's not your lane. But just to think about having that, bus-only markings and the brick red paint as a possibility for that section. But yeah, I'm excited to see the next phase as we get closer, and can't wait to go to the groundbreaking for this. That's it.
All right. So for the sake of time, I'm just gonna like list these off as I've written them. But preface: I love everything about this. This is revolutionary. We're gonna take one of the worst streets to use anything but a car into one of the best streets to use anything but a car in the city, and that's amazing. So to the extent I have any like critiques, it's all just very nitpicking in the grand scheme of things. This is great. So I would suggest on the parking front, marketing very aggressively. The top line takeaway is we are providing 100% of the parking that we know is needed here, right? Like, don't bury as much as possible the number that's being taken away, because there are people who will exploit that intentionally and misuse it because they don't like bikes or whatever. So I would aggressively market the fact that this is providing more parking than people use now. I think that this project and every single other project we have should have 100% universal conflict striping, like you have at the crosswalks, at every single driveway, at every single point where a car is going into the possible path of travel of a cyclist or a pedestrian. There should be the same green hatch mark conflict striping. I can't imagine that would cost that much more. And so I think like it's just that one little reminder, like, watch out. You might have to look both ways for cyclists here, and not just left for oncoming traffic. So that's for this project and the next project, that comment. I won't get into this too much because I know it's not going to change, but that like little one lane shopping area on the north, I guess like northeast top right. Yeah, that. I would love an ideal world if instead of having the cars up against the business there, that they were brought to where the street was and the, pedestrian planter street furnishing stuff was all put in front of the businesses and the cars were where the road is, so that could be more of a real place, and have a bit more of a welcoming identity, because that's kind of like, that's the alleged heart of the Mesa, that intersection, right? And it doesn't really feel that way in terms of like any sort of civically minded or placemaking like way, like other than like Corner Tap has the architecture facing the intersection. Like, I think in an ideal world, the cars would be parked on the side like the rest of the project, and that would just be a really large area for people to hang out. But moving on from that, let's see, where am I here? Yeah, glad to see the separate facility and the narrowing of the travel lanes. I think when I first heard that this thing was in flux, I was really worried that like the angst about the multi-use path would mean there would be no separate facility for bikes, but instead we get a separate facility for bikes and pedestrian, and that's amazing, and especially for a well-traveled area like this. I think the Hidden Valley one is fine, right? Where there's no sidewalk. Most of it didn't even have a sidewalk before. Like, I think the conflicts occasionally happen, but it's pretty minimal. So I think, but for this, it's great that they're separate. Yeah, I'm worried about how many of these projects are slated for 2027. So I think, because you hear people freak out now about how much work is going on in the city, and I feel like if you're going to do this in Modoc in the same time, basically are parallel routes to each other, like that could be a concern. So I would love to accelerate this as much as possible. I know that's up to many other factors. Yeah, like committee member Blackerby said, I think the transition from where it's a two-way path to separate one-way paths is super important because it has to be intuitive or you will have people just keep going, right? And so that poses a risk to everybody. And I don't know if we thought about completely moving it to the north side for the rest of the duration, so it's on the same side as where the Las Positas path is, or having it two-way for the rest of the duration so there isn't like two crossing ways, but I'm sure you thought about it. I remain a little bit angsty about that. I do like that you moved it outside of the busy intersection, though. I think that's the right move if you're going to do it. And then I would advocate to add as much, bike parking, bike share, and public seating as well throughout the right-of-way. It does not like you need a bench in front of every person's house, but like a lot of these spots, it's a long stretch. Like, I think it'd be nice to see more of that kind of street furniture. And yeah, that's it for me, but very excited for this.
All right, any other comments? Okay. I think I will add, I think you said in the beginning that I think is really core, the vision for this is transforming it from a highway to a street. And that is just lovely. And I think really what makes this so exciting. I do kind of throughout the project, I really like the trees planted in the kind of medians between the paths or the bike paths and the street. I think that's really key because we're narrowing the lanes and we're kind of reducing the traffic flow, but as long as, and we have wider sidewalks and bike paths, but all of that by itself is very flat and will keep this area feeling very wide and open. And so I think that will still psychologically make people feel like they should be driving faster. And so I think having those trees closer to the street between the bike path and the vehicle traffic, I think is really key to kind of helping narrow that more than if they were kind of confined to the sidewalk. As always, whenever we have to remove trees, I always hope we can add them as close to where they were removed as possible, to not kind of create new gaps and concentrate trees in places that are already kind of vegetated. Let's see, I love the separated bike path rather than just the strict multi-use path. Someone who I will ride my bike on the beachside multi-use path, and it very quickly gets very annoying to loop around people who are having their own lovely walk. But yeah, I think just having that separation is really helpful. Always more bike parking. And overall, yeah, I think this is really fantastic. I'd love to see, just some of that signal management incorporated to help just take that last little edge off of any of these areas. And I think that's my comments. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else on this matter?
No.
All right.
Just a quick, is everybody okay to go to the next item? Did you want a 5-minute break, or is everybody ready to keep moving? Okay.
All right, we can move right on to our third agenda item, which is the update on the west side. Where's my title? West Side and Lower West Neighborhood Transportation Management Plan Implementation Project Update.
Yes, we try to have the longest project titles ever. But yes, again, this is something that you saw roughly about a year ago. But we've made some kind of like Cliff Drive, some minor refinements in certain areas. So we'll be, Ms. Bedard will be taking you through that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we'll get started on the next item, the West Side and Lower West Neighborhoods Transportation Management Plan Implementation Project. So just a brief refresher for starters from the last time we were here, but key component again, this project is sort of the a mixed bag of a lot of different improvements. It includes bike routes, crosswalks, sidewalk infill. So first slide, we'll take a look at the proposed bike routes, the existing bike route facilities in black and the proposed infrastructures in red. The first area located along Modoc Road between Las Positas and Mission Street. One of the prior designs, the grant fund design was originally going to be two-way on one side of the street. One of the major changes is now it's one way in both directions. We'll get into more on that in upcoming slides. Then also just connections between the west side and the lower west side. So a connection on Carrillo, then along this direction, connecting San Andres into the lower west. And then also connecting to the project we just talked about, to Waterfront and Cliff Drive. Another important component of this is also just the cross connections at this arrow. If you can see along Modoc, this is a existing pedestrian bike overpass bridge over the freeway. That's key. So if pedestrian or families live on the west side, but maybe have elementary students that go to, I'm thinking about Cliff. Adams Elementary on Las Positas here. And then let's move to the next slide. So next we'll take a look at the sidewalk infill. Again, this is largely what we've heard from the community is the important needs in areas where it's existing gaps in the existing infrastructure. So again, in red is proposed. You have the segment, one of the highest requested areas was the West Valerio Street, adding sidewalk infill to the entrance of Elings Park on this side. And we also have this little segment at Manitou and Mountain. This is currently a blind corner and there's no sidewalks, so this is a great enhancement, adding sidewalks for pedestrians. Then also a key component right now, Cairiel from Treasure to Las Positas does not have any sidewalks, so this project will also add new sidewalk along this stretch of Cairiel. And then also some various locations here on the west side on Euclid. This is an important connection along Euclid. It connects from Mitchell-Terrena. Currently there's a, what we call a informal beaten path that takes you from Mitchell-Terrena to Euclid. That will be formalized with a sidewalk from Mitchell-Terrena down Euclid, and that's a key connection to the West Side Community Center. Also a connection to the Boys and Girls Club on the west side. And so again, for the crossings, this is just another focus, some of the elements where we felt that safer pedestrian crossings were needed enhancements. This is the location here where all the new crosswalk enhancements are proposed. A few along Modoc Road and then also along San Andres Street, which has a higher vehicle volume travel. The areas, it's kind of hard to see, but with a little asterisk next to them, those are ones that have been recently completed. We were able to secure funding through other funding sources, and the ones of West Sola, Victoria, and Anapamu Street have been recently completed, and we're starting the one on West Arriaga soon, or last month, I think we started. So just some engineering design updates. Again, the Modoc bike path design, bike path, it'll be a two one-way bike paths along Modoc Road from Las Positas to Mission Street. Some of the changes we looked at were various locations of in-street level versus sidewalk level. And we have some renderings that we'll go through for that segment as well. Also added crosswalks from prior review. So in the image on the left, you see the added crosswalk at San Pasqual and Coronel Street, and then along Modoc at Hacienda, Kenchia Avenue, Eucalyptus, and Oak. And then also a new traffic signal at Portezuelo and Modoc. So what we heard, again, similar to Cliff Drive, again, the project's been in the works for a few years, and overall continued support of the project. Support for conflict striping in the intersections, requesting signal lighting for bike lanes, bike lights at the intersections. One, for instance, request was for bike lanes on Portezuelo to connect to Modoc to Gillespie. These are some of the things we've heard early on in the original outreach in our neighborhood transportation management plan. So these items are on our radar. They're not currently covered in this grant. We'd have to seek additional grant funding for additional sources to do some of these other items that came up.
But just to clarify on the green, there will be a separated bike phase for the Las Positas Modoc intersection. So that's coming. And the bike lanes on Portezuelo, we actually, how it's proposed now is just to have a widened sidewalk, multi-use path adjacent to the school, similar to what we just did at, Santa Barbara Junior High. So something along those lines. But we'll investigate in addition to bike lanes, I think we'd have to look at lots of parking there. And again, we keep hearing over and over the importance of parking in this neighborhood. So, but I think we would initially start with just the shared path in front of the school, like the Santa Barbara Junior High.
So look at Modoc Road again. This is kind of a larger scale zoomed out, but just in general, you can see the path will be from Las Positas and Modoc, and then all the way along to along Mission Street here. What this slide, what we looked at is overall parking, and similar to Cliff Drive, we did a staff assessment of parking. We looked at counted existing parking spaces and observed parking demands at various times. Currently on the street, there's 72 parking spaces. These are limited spaces, 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. overnight only to accommodate the existing Class 2 bike lane during the day commute hours. And then the proposed project, I'll go over in more detail on this next slide, but we're proposing 30 on-street parking spaces in this region between Hacienda Drive and adjacent to the La Cumbre Junior High field. We have coordinated with the Santa Barbara County School District, Unified School District. They're in support of the project and these added spaces. The one thing about these spaces at prior design, we had 23 spaces. We've heard that, again, it's important for the neighborhood to have access to parking, so current design proposes 30 spaces in this stretch. And the one change, and still being evaluated, but potentially this has potential for overnight and daytime parking because the bike lane will be separated from it'll be a separated bike lane rather than the Class 2 in-street bike lane. And then the additional parking spaces, there's 11 additional spaces east of Kenchia, between Kenchia and Mission Streets. So looking at San Andres, and like we mentioned before, one of the improvements here at Carrillo and San Andres is adding the green conflict striping and kind of the breadcrumbs to guide cyclists through the intersection. San Andres, the segment of San Andres between Carrillo and Cannon Perdido Street will include a Class 2 bike lane. And to accommodate that, the parking on the Mesa Church, northwest side, Shoreline Church side, yeah. The parking on that side will be eliminated to accommodate the bike lane. And then on the north side or downtown side, we'll say, the existing vehicle parking will be retained, and then it'll be the Class 2 bike lane on this side. So essentially a 5.5-foot wide bike lane, 10-foot vehicle travel lanes in both directions, a 5.5-foot wide bike lane, and then existing street parking to remain, and then existing sidewalk on both sides to remain. Other key features of this intersection, of course, is the enhanced crosswalks and additional lighting. We also have as we mentioned before, along Modoc and Portezuelo, and also along the junior high frontage, but we're doing at this corner, Carrillo, doing a widened sidewalk here.
Are these crosswalks going to move to where they're kind of superimposed?
It'll be just more aligned with the infrastructure, yeah, so.
Right. So it's not like you're going to have full crosswalk.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. And then just taking a closer look at the San Andres Canon Perdido side. Again, so we are retaining on-street parking on the downtown side of the street, and then we're adding the curb extensions on this corner of Canon Perdido. So for tree removals, again, like we discussed previously, but we never want to remove any trees, but the trees proposed for removal at this time, we're still under evaluation. We are proposing to go to the Street Tree Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation Commission next month in July, and the plans will be evaluated, but currently these are the trees proposed for removal. And again, these trees are just the trees that are in direct conflict with the proposed path. So 35 trees at this time proposed for removal, but we are proposing, I've identified 40 new opportunities for new street tree plantings. So now we'll just go through some renderings of the intersections. This is Las Positas at Modoc. So again, you can see the green conflict striping, the curb extensions. This is on the sidewalk level bike lane. Then moving down through, we're kind of moving easterly in the direction along Modoc, this Modoc Hacienda. So again, added crosswalks at this intersection, the striping for cyclists and pedestrians at the crosswalk, and a new rapid flashing beacon at this intersection. Moving further along Modoc Vista Madera, so enhancements to the existing crosswalks and adding the cycling lane. This is example on the school side. This is an in-street level separated bike path. And then Modoc Portezuelo, this is a key change here. This is where the new traffic signal is proposed. We did review this internally with our city principal traffic engineer, and he did the studies and determined that a traffic signal is warranted at this location. Another key change here is, you can see in the image on the right, the proposed image, but the island here in the bike lane, that's intentional to kind of slow cyclists down through the intersection and to avoid conflicts with vehicles turning right here. So it's a very thoughtful consideration, again, to try to slow traffic and eliminate potential collisions. So again, look, it's Portezuelo and Modoc, adjacent to the La Cumbre Junior High and Santa Barbara Community Academy, the widened sidewalk along the school side. And this is also a connection to the Gillespie infrastructure.
And right where Michelle's cursor was, where the connection where the Gillespie bike-friendly street is, right in that kind of that general area is where the bike parking is for the school campus.
Right. So Modoc and Kensia, again, separated sidewalk level bike path, a new crosswalk at this intersection, rapid flashing beacons. Modoc and Eucalyptus is kind of one of those awkward corners where the streets don't really line up, but so we're adding a new crosswalk, the high visibility crosswalks and the rapid flashing beacon. Las Positas and Calle Real, again, so this is, we're proposing widened sidewalks on the Las Positas side, and then again, the new sidewalks along Calle Real. So this is moving along Calle Real down towards Oak Park area, so it's looking at the Calle Real and Betty. This particular location, we are still, you can see the proposed trees as a landscaping buffer. We are still looking at this location, but there could potentially be a tree here, but we have to field out conflicts. We want to make sure that there's no utility or other potential conflicts in that location. And then Calle Real and Treasure, the new sidewalk and crosswalk. This is kind of a key connection point to the pedestrian bike overpass over the freeway, the bridge over the freeway. This is looking Carrillo San Andres at the widened sidewalk in this location. This is looking towards Cliff and Meg's intersection. And then the proposed new sidewalk along West Valerio to the Elings Park entrance. Again, along West Valerio, Calle Poniente, and Calle Canyon at this intersection. New crosswalks with rapid flashing beacons. And next steps, again, I mentioned briefly, but the Street Tree Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation Commission are scheduled for July 3rd and July 23rd. And like Cliff, we're moving in towards closing environmental review. We're looking at city council, probably late summer, early fall. And then again, that allows us, closing environmental review allows us to move into the next phases of design, and then we'll continue into construction and continue to have community outreach meetings through the construction phase. So that's short and sweet on the West Side project, West Side and Lower West Side project. Happy to answer any questions.
And like the Cliff Vision Zero project, we also have a non-infrastructure component with this grant as well, to do community rides and then specific tailored outreach to the schools in the area. And then we also have some funding towards a bike fleet, especially for junior high age kids, because that was a gap. MOVE has a lot of the fleets for the elementary age, but once you get into junior high, like some kids are already at adult heights at that age, but then some still stay little. So really having a bike fleet that matches the students for that they could hopefully use in a PE class.
All right, thank you. Committee questions?
Yeah. Fewer, thankfully, on this one. So they're all centered around this Kyriel treasure area. So I'm curious about that pedestrian bridge. I lived in Hidden Valley for like 5 years before finding out that existed. So I'm curious if there's, and I found out it existed from the city's interactive like bike map. And I just saw, wait, why is there a squiggle of that beige there? I'm confused. And I went on Google Maps and I found it. But what is like the city's policy, or is there like a programming or routine thought process on A, cleaning those so they're attractive to use, and B, like pointing them out to people that this is a bike pedestrian overcrossing over here, like in the street? Because I don't think there is any signage.
For starters, I'd just like to point out too, we have the City SB Connect, and that's you can use that as an app or on the website, and that is probably the quickest way to get response to any cleanup item, tree requests, et cetera. So.
And that's in coordination with Caltrans as well. So, but it is hard, yes, for our overcrossings can be targets for, of course, nuisance and cleaning. And they can be cleaned to the minute and then something else happen. And so it's just sort of the ongoing. But generally speaking, it at least in the times where I read it, it's been fairly clean, but it's just, and I think part of it is just, the more people that use it and more sort of eyes, maybe then there's less nuisance. But anyway, that whole section of that neighborhood does report to Adams Elementary School. So obviously they've had a really robust bike PE program at Adams Elementary over the years, but unfortunately, a lot of kids are driven mainly because of all the sort of constraints and routes to get to school. So this will be kind of a first major step in providing a widened path to get to school. But that also begs the question, and we have it in our CIP program, is to really look at the whole Las Positas corridor from Modoc all the way to State Street. And we don't have funding for that, but that is, yes, that is in our capital program.
Yeah, it's in there.
To be looked at as sort of the second tie. But as soon as you turn the corner at that Kyrail sidewalk, there is, at least it's narrow, but it is a sidewalk that goes to then a crossing guard to get into Adams.
Well, yeah, I'd love to close that gap ASAP. But on the bridge, so if the city wanted, point taken on like the app, and it is pretty fine, like inside it. I feel like just the exterior of it doesn't exactly exude like invitingness. Like if the city wanted to do anything or repaint it, does that require Caltrans sign off?
Yeah, I think we would,
not the property of the city.
Caltrans is about to embark on a very big maintenance program or project in probably the next year, kind of in our whole sort of South County area. So that's something, thank you for bringing it up. I can mention to them to see if they could potentially add a fresh new coat of
And I
paint.
think it goes for
Yeah.
all of them.
Yes.
But they're city property, right? They're not, or are they Caltrans?
Those ones are Caltrans
Okay.
facilities, is
Gotcha.
my understanding.
Okay. On who? On
Hinneboro,
yeah, Pilgrim's
bridge.
Terrace. It's Pilgrim's Terrace, and then it goes Junipero. Yeah, it's pretty tucked away. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave that one there. I think signage would be a good, if you can fit it in here, would be great. Could you just go back to the renderings on Calle Real and Treasure, if possible? I just missed it. I just wanted to look at it. Okay. Sweet. All right. And then for Calle Real and Betty, where there's that dead end street, any thought to just connecting the street to Calle Real from like a circulation perspective, or are we worried about conflicts doing something like that? It's like
We'd
it-
have to
yeah.
do more research on that. That whole stretch is all Caltrans right away.
Oh, even that? Okay.
Yes, that's part of their facility for the approaches to the whole on and off ramps from
Yeah.
the,
Bus pieces.
yes.
Okay, didn't know that.
And so I think that would, it was done in the early 80s, and I'd have to dig more into the files on the wire operationally, but
Cool.
yeah, I
Just
don't have
curious.
a response right now for that. But there, yes, and then that had been a whole project too of, because that whole section of roadway used to be a two-way to get to the hospitals, because now in order to go to Cottage Hospital, you have to go to Mission and then hop back on the freeway northbound to get on the off exit. And so that was actually one of my first projects when I got to Public Works, was to come up with some designs for that. But then enters all the political process and timing but at some point, that might happen in the future to reintroduce that from an emergency access perspective to our only level 3 trauma center between LA and Santa Barbara and I'm sorry, San Francisco. Mm-hmm.
All right, additional questions? No? Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
No speakers for public comment.
All right, we'll move into committee comments. All right, go for it.
I'm noticing on both Cliff Drive and this, the way things are written and sort of put out in this about trees is that it's like, we're gonna need to cut down all these, and we're gonna add a bunch more. I'd really flip that for what it's worth, unsolicited advice of be like, we're gonna plant this many more trees. They're gonna be great. Unfortunately, we also need to lose some because you're netting trees in both of these projects. And so, but when you look at this, you're like, oh man, this is a bummer. Oh, they're gonna add more. So for what it's worth, from a messaging perspective, I would flip that information. Obviously, there's no getting around the street tree advisory committee. Not that you're trying to hide anything, but to lead with the good news that, hey, we're going to add more trees. So anyway, that was my only comment, but this is very exciting, and I think the changes that you've made in this are great.
Thank you, Chair Buckby. Just to respond just briefly, we struggle with that, and although we're netting trees, we still, it takes a while for a tree to get to the same
Absolutely.
canopy and level that, yes, some of these mature trees have. So I know that it's really difficult to message about trees, but thank you. That's good feedback.
Say as an additional comment on trees, I know at UCSB, whenever they have to cut down a tree, they do it over a break and early in the morning, so that way, like, they're not disturbing classes with the chainsaws, and the result of that is always that people are convinced that they were trying to secretly remove the trees when no one was looking. And that's not really what's happening. Any other comments? Go for it.
All right, I'll be quick. This is great. I love it. It's super needed because that last stretch of MODOK before Mission is rough when the cars come back. And even as a driver, I drive it all the time, and it's not the best experience usually because people are coming out of blind corners or just doing weird stuff, and yeah, you have to be on your toes there. I'm really happy with the new traffic signal in front of the junior high. I agree with community member Blackerby's comment about the branding of the tree calculations, but I do think this one, it's a little hard to swallow a net gain of just, I think it's 5 when they take so long to mature. So there will be a long time where it feels very poignantly to people that trees are just gone. And so as much as possible of, it does not, everything has to be trees. So as many as you can add, it's amazing. But like other things that make people feel like just better about the area, like without the trees, like that would be great. Seating, landscaping, public art, anything, placemaking stuff. I think the new bike lanes in San Andreas, or changed bike lanes are great. I think if you could add any sort of buffering or protection, I know like hard infrastructure is probably off the table, but any sort of separation from the cars or just like encouragement of the cars to stay away would be good. I think, on the area near the fire station, I think it's Hacienda, I think arguably over parking. I think, more parking is good for folks who need it, but like, I just hope that we're not losing any safety benefits by kind of being too cautious to take someone's favorite spot away. Cause like, at the end of the day, like it's not the whole city's responsibility to provide for the parking that isn't being provided for on private property, right? Like it's a private piece of real estate, it's a private product, the car, like, the public good should prioritize the safety and circulation first, and then if there's room, throw in the parking in my estimation. But I think you're striking the right balance here. I understand there's lots of strong opinions about that. I do think Portezuela would ideally have bike lanes, even if, yes, it takes a few parking spaces away in certain locations, but adds them in others. I feel like I went to the open house, the in-person one at La Cumbra for this, and I felt like the prevailing sentiment of the people there was frustration that you're not going even more aggressive with the bike lanes on the west side and adding even more. And I think that tracks with what we found in the Safe Routes to School survey, with people saying they'd be happy to lose a few parking spots if it meant they got a bike lane. So I just continue to go down that route. I love all the crosswalk improvements, love the conflict striping. The sidewalk infill is incredible, especially in Calle Real. So those are all, there's a lot of great things about this project. And yeah, I'm excited to see it happen, and I hope it can happen before 2027, if possible.
All right, and I will, let's see, we have no other comments. I think I actually meant to ask this as a question, so I'll twist it into a comment. On the, I think it's best shown on the MODOK Kentia rendering, but there's looks like the raised curbs separating out the bike path from the street. And I guess I was curious, from a design perspective, like, why do we have the raised curbs there versus, say, on Coda, we have the, like, little pretend bollards, and when do we make what choice, and how do we get more separated bike paths?
Yeah, I'm glad you answered that question. The Coda was our very first class 4 facility with the buffering, with the flex posts, and I think the main issue for that project or learning lessons is that it feels a little construction-y. If that's a word. And then we still have where cars will weave in between and park there. And we've known that somebody's been like doored and like, cause they then have to weave out of the protected bike lane. And so we actually did just recently receive a grant to replace all of those bollards and put in the same thing, the image that you're seeing here. So that's coming soon. Yeah, the little, yeah, what we're finding, that one's a little bit more complicated because again, Caltrans facility and we can't go into the boat, the structural section. As soon as you go into a structural section, then you start to own it. And we don't want to own that facility and a little bit more complexities. So, and we did do, there's the chess pieces too. And so we originally wanted that for the State Street undercrossing, but we're finding that they're coming off very easily on the Mitchell-Torrena Bridge. And so, and it just, it's hard for the construction method to get those drilled in. So, but anyway, for here, it is something, and the traffic engineer and I, we road tripped to see other facilities, specifically in Lincoln, Santa Monica. They have this curve. And then also when I was in Washington, D.C. this summer, I was able, kind of right near the White House, they have this type of curve, and it's really nice and a really clean, kind of minimalistic look. And I think this will be really nice for Santa Barbara style bike infrastructure.
Yeah, I thought that looked great. I was really happy to see that. All right, if we have no other comments. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, a comment, and then I am going to ask another question about what we were just talking about. Well, let me ask the question first. These little Kirby things, are they angled? Like if you do touch that with your bike tire, is it kind of a graceful thing, or do you end up just having your wheels taken out?
I would relate it just to kind of the curb. That's a normal kind of curb, right on as the sidewalk. So ideally, you stay away from it and not not to hit it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it done with
Right.
with angled ones, and I guess
Yeah,
I would,
and I think we haven't
prefer
set because some of these can be precast, and so we haven't gotten to that final level of detail. But yeah, I know that we've been talking to other jurisdictions to get the final, the specs on those. And then some of them will actually pour in place when, on some of the Cliff Drive ones that have landscaping in them.
but
One of
my
the-
general comment is I really like everything, and even Portezuelo. I mean, I understand that you can't do everything, and Portezuelo is a lower speed road. And like, I don't mind riding my bike in the middle of Portezuelo. I don't want to ride my bike in the middle of MoDOC, you know? It's, so I think there's just good balance, nice new design features, and I get the fit, you know, just since I've been on the committee for a couple of years, I see you're learning things and doing a lot of things that just really make sense, so, good stuff.
Thank you.
E-bike. All right, I think that concludes our business for tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn at 8:14?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. We are adjourned.